Hey guys, welcome to the show. It's Christine Jewell, co-founder of the Momentum Company, faith-based executive coach. Today, I'm joined by Jon Anderson, who is our head success coach at the Momentum Company. And we're going to be diving into a conversation around coaching, training, some of the key differences between the two. How do you know when you need training? How do you know when you need coaching? And how do we utilize both for the greatest impact inside of our organizations, our people, so that we can actually multiply not only performance, but profitability. So, Jon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. I think this is the first time just you and I are doing a podcast together. So this is going to
Yeah,
be good. I'm
it's so
excited for
fun.
it.
We
Yes.
always have like multiple meetings a week, and we're talking about all the things behind the scenes, like client challenges, client wins, and how to improve our processes and coaching processes and toolbox of trainings, etc. And I'm like, we need to do a podcast just talking about not only why coaching, but what is the difference between training and coaching. So we're going to unpack a couple ones that really jump out at us. And I specifically want you guys to tune in if those of you are people who are currently investing in your team. How's that working for you? Are you actually getting the results, the transformation, the momentum that you want to be seeing? Like, meaning, is your investment producing ROI? Secondly, if you're not investing in your team, and maybe you're that person that's been kicking it down the can, like the can down the road, right? You're just like, I'll do it later when the next fire really gets so big that we can't stand it anymore. And we've got people in both camps. Maybe there's some people
Mhm.
that know you need to do something but haven't done anything, ever or in a while. And you're like, now's the time. I just want to preface this podcast by saying, y'all, we are in the relationship era. People are the multiplier factor inside of our businesses. Um, we see machine everywhere, AI's going everywhere. There's a lot of scarcity thinking around what's happening in the economy, around technology. And I really believe that the economy is investing in people, investing in right
Mhm.
relationships, equipping and empowering people that will show up, play full out. And when people are supported and have the right heart, they're aligned to the mission, they have the right tools, man, they'll go to the ends of the earth for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Well, it's interesting you say you're talking about relationships right away. Because there's so much AI right now, Chat GPT, all the things, right? like, um, and yet those are great. They're a great tool when we know how to use them. But people are really craving just that personal connection. Like we have a lot of. We're doing this podcast, virtually, right? We're not like actually in the same room, um, and a lot of teams are doing that too. But people are really craving that like interpersonal like relationship,
mhm.
because we're getting technology is removing us,
Yeah.
naturally from that right now. So.
Totally, totally. And I think, I think this is a great segue right into it. I feel like a lot of training that's happening nowadays, it's been like this to some degree, but because we have so much technology available, a lot of training is being done through videos and audios and asking people to sit and watch training, right? So we're trying to transfer, basically, when we think of training, we're talking about knowledge transfer, right? I want to transfer
Mhm.
information, maybe skill sets, whatever, frameworks, trainings on specific things, delivering information from one way to another. And so we've got this
Mhm.
situation where, okay, how do we transfer information from our heads to our people or from skill sets? And so a lot of people are using AI tools or having their people sit and watch videos, and that can be good. However, I think that there's a lot of caveats to that if we're missing the relationship piece. So let's just talk about let's just start there. So training versus coaching. Training is definitely, designed to transfer knowledge from one to another. It can be done through tech or in-person stuff versus coaching, which is much more on personal application of the information, right? When I think about,
Mhm.
if we give someone the information, I don't just want to know, like, did you read it? I want to know, how are you applying it? Right? What is the mindset? What's happening inside of you and what action are you taking? Because there's a lot of people that sit around a library full of books, and they're like, yeah, I read that book. I read that book. I read that book. And you're like, did you actually do anything with it? Thoughts? Anything to add to that?
Yes.
As we talk about the differences between, I'm curious
Hmm.
for you to add difference between knowledge transfer versus, the application of the knowledge.
Hmm.
That I want to ask you that. And then B, where do you feel like training goes bad if we would depend too much on the
Mm,
tech?
that's a great question. Um, and I think like so we are in a world that is bombarded with information, right? Like you can go to YouTube, you can go to podcasts, you can read a book. I mean, shoot, you don't even have to read a book. You can just listen to to a book, right? And you could say like, oh yeah, I've gone through their training, I've read the book, I've listened to the book, I've listened to YouTube videos and whatever, right? Like, and it's all great. Like, I'm not saying any of that stuff is bad, right? It's actually really good, and I do a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that stuff myself, right? That's how I get
Mm-hmm.
sharper. But that's kind of training, right? But like, where does it go from there? Like, how do we actually take it from the pages of the book, the words of the book, the chapters, right, and actually apply it um, to what we deal with every day,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's really what it is. Like, so we have a live event, right? And our live event is it's. I mean, we do get into a little bit of coaching, like in the participants, but it's mainly the training. We're we're
Mainly
we're
training.
training. We're setting the foundations of our models and just presenting the information, and it's great. And like we get awesome scores, and everybody loves it, right?
Mind
And but the
blown.
thing, a lot of them are mind blowing. Like this is the greatest training ever. Everybody needs to go go do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when the real world hits, like when they go back to their job and they go back to their homes, their families, it's like, okay, so we talked about this model. I learned about this model. They trained me on the model, but how do I actually use this model to have a better relationship with my wife or my husband? How do
Mm-hmm.
I use this model to help me lead my team better? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think coaching comes into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need training. We gotta give them the foundations. We gotta give people the foundations of the things, but then we need to give them we need to coach them on how to use those and
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
apply them.
Yeah.
You know.
One of my favorite things with the coaching is really the ability to take people through different seasons, different circumstances. Because when you watch a video or you go through a sales training or you go through a leadership training, it all sounds so great. You're like, yeah, I could totally use this. I will apply this, right? Like this sounds great. I can have this conversation. But then when the heat's on, the pressure cooker's on, and there's maybe like people sitting in a team meeting, and maybe there's some division, some arrows flying, people getting protective over their territories. Now the heat's up, emotions are up, people get triggered. Right now we have the real human experience. And so when we have both the toolbox and then you have the coaching that's walking it out when people are going through different seasons. I think seasons is important, right? Because like every
Mm,
every business has its seasons where it's like it's go time, everything's flourishing, like the deals are happening, and then there's maybe more delivery time or there's more time to restructure and focus on systems. Like we all have seasons and cycles to our businesses that maybe,
mhm,
coincide with natural seasons in the calendar, but we go through things. And so when somebody is trained on something maybe 3 months ago and all of a sudden they're going through a crisis or difficult conversations that need to happen, hiring, firing, whatever, it's like, how's their recall? How do they, or how do they apply it now? So I think that that's really
mhm.
important also to
Yes.
remember. The other thing that I wanted to circle back to, and I do love this. I mean, I'm totally plugging the Thriving Leader program for a minute because this is one of the things that we have dialed in. So many people are still sending their teams to stuffy conference rooms that honestly is like fake everything, synthetic carpet, no light. It's just PowerPoints, and it's just like information overload. And before, like within the first hour, people are like, glazed over. Like they've already
Yes.
checked out.
Yes.
They're looking at their phones under the table. They're like, how long till we get out of here? I think one of the things
Yes.
that, whether you do training with us and you hire us to do training, is that you are creating not just a transfer of knowledge, but you're also creating an experience around that. So you won't
Mm,
find a
mhm.
PowerPoint in our events, right? We're getting people up, they're practicing the frameworks. Like the training is an interactive
Hmm.
experience because you want to not only just train their mind, but we want to train it into their body, right? Like, what would you
Yeah,
say? Add.
yeah, well, 100%. So I, you know me, Christine. Like I always take things and apply it to, or put the cowboy spin on it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I like to think of it as like I could tell you, I can tell somebody how to ride a horse, right? I could tell them like the good posture, like how to climb on a horse, do all the things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're like, okay, I got it. Okay, but once they get on a horse, it's a totally
A
different
whole different thing. Now this
ball
thing's
game,
kicking.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because now there's different things. There's my emotions, there's a horse emotions and feelings, and there's scary things around,
Mm-hmm.
that could set up the horse, So there's a lot of different aspects rather than just read it in a book and be like, hey, here it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like I can train somebody, I can tell them how to do it, but until they actually experience it,
Put in the
they
fire.
don't really fully know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have all these other factors that come to play. Because like once they get on that horse, all of a sudden they're like, if somebody's never gotten on a horse before, now their nerves are going. They're stressed, like they're starting to sweat
Yeah.
because now all of a sudden they're like, oh, these horses are bigger than like up on the saddle. I'm taller, I'm higher up than I thought I was going to be. So now it's
Mm-hmm.
scarier, and so
Yeah.
now they revert back to just natural or like reactive instincts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where the coaching comes to play, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
difference between knowing how to ride horse and actually ride horse is the coaching is like, okay, I can coach you, I can teach you how to ride a horse, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I coach you on how to develop a feel for the horse,
Mm-hmm.
how to know what the horse is communicating to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is the
Mm-hmm.
horse paying attention to? So that way, like, you're not just sitting on the horse and just going for a ride. Like, you can actually start moving the horse and doing something effectively. And I think
Yeah.
it's a lot of leaders are like that too. Like, they get into these positions and they read the books and they can quote all the
Mm-hmm.
things. But once they get into it, when they actually have to apply pressure to the team or the team is pressured, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when the true leaders step up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when we
Yeah.
got to come to play, and
It's
that's where
so
coaching
important.
helps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Totally. I love it. You and your horse analogies. Well, and it's also, I think, important because a big frustration of leaders, and it's the same thing if you're a parent. Look, you tell your kids how to do something, you're like, I told you how to do it. I showed you how to pick up your clothes or wash the car. Or we tell our employees, like, we told you how to do that. We showed you, you watched the process, you read the SOP. What's the problem? Right. And so that's where really it takes time, it takes energy, it takes intention to actually mentor and coach people. So they really do go hand in hand. So maybe I want to just speak to some of the people out there that
Mhm,
have, maybe you guys feel like, hey man, our training is great, we have tons of SOPs, we got processes, we got trainings. Do you also, how do you coach, how do you mentor your people, what's going on in house to continue to develop, another differentiator, and they're kind of similar to what we just discussed, is the opportunity to create really structured content that has a standard to it, right? The beauty of training is it allows us to have a very specific consistent standard right, and structure for how information is delivered, because you could train all these 20 people on how to train different people on things, but it's like the telephone game. Before you know it, now everybody's got their own interpretation. And so it can muddy the water. So, a great opportunity, great training to me is actually very consistent. It's standardized. It has a certain level of excellence. There's frameworks for the mode of delivery, right? So we have consistency around how the information is presented, what the next steps are
mhm,
like, and we can multiply it, we can scale that, which is amazing. So again, just want to like highlight some things as people are thinking, man, do we need training, do we need coaching? It might
mm,
be both, right? Like, are you trying to teach people processes, systems, impart knowledge? What conversations are you having over and over and over again that you're like, man, I need to just automate this somehow and have it automated at a high level of excellence that is consistent so we can scale it. So I just want to challenge you on that. And then as we look at going, okay, how do we take that? Now it's standardized. It meets your level of excellence, but then how do we start to customize it a little bit to meet people where they are? And that's again where that mentorship and coaching comes in. And I think we've talked about that a lot, is because look, like
Mhm.
John's going to receive that information differently than someone else's, right? We are still dealing with humans, hopefully not just machines. I mean, if you're just plugging it into a machine, it's a machine, but we're humans. You're dealing with humans. And we have to remember that, y'all, humans have emotions. They learn differently, they apply differently, they're motivated differently. So training doesn't really address motivators. And I want to talk about that for a second. Where coaching is able to take a training and figure out what motivates your people to actually apply the training. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's this is how I like to think about it, is like we can have I love what you said about training, like it needs to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Um because if you have a consistent training, um then it makes coaching a heck of a lot easier. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But like if let's just say we're doing like some sort of sales training, we can give people the perfect script. Like if they say this script the exact way, they're gonna get 100% sales. They're gonna bat 1,000, right? And there are some really good uh, effective scripts out there.
Mm-hmm.
But why are your people not using those scripts?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if I give you the perfect script, like why are you not using it? Right? So there's other things that are coming into play. It's not just, hey, here's the SOP, just follow the SOP. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, if this SOP works every time, why are my people not following it? Well, because there's other factors, right? There's emotions, there's
Yeah.
relationships, there's things at home, there's
Mm-hmm.
relationships at work as well too that are coming into play. There's our past that
Mm-hmm.
comes into play, our stories that we
Mm-hmm.
tell ourselves, about other people, about the world that are coming into play, and that's really where coaching is helpful, right? Like here's the training. You guys know the training. You know the 1, 2, 3 process, the ABCs, right? But why are you not doing them? Okay, this is where the coach can ask like really good questions to dive in. Like, what are the roadblocks?
Yeah.
Because those are the things that the training can't really speak to,
Mm-hmm.
but the coaching can.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching can kind of unpack some of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
to really understand. Okay, like what is the barrier?
Yeah. How to help people process it. I love that, because the reality is, and we talk about this often in our team calls, actually, is it a tool problem? You know, we have these 5 E's of leadership, the 5E process. The first E is enlisting, making sure that we have buy-in, right? Like, have we got the people's hearts? Are they aligned? Do they know where we're going? Are they on board in the bus? Like, are we all rowing in the same direction? Are they enlisted? A lot of us are trying to give people training and coaching that are not bought in. So we need to, address that buy-in first. The second E is equipping, which is what we're talking about when we are talking about training, is we need to equip them with the tools, with the resources, with the information, with the structure, right? Like that's the training component. And then the empowering is number 3. So we enlist, then we equip, then we empower, right? We Some people like the word enable. I don't really love that word, but we give them the ability to use the tools well, with certainty, with confidence, with clarity, to go out there and execute. And then we look at evaluating, enlarging, or promoting, right? We need to have metrics that we're measuring, and we want to know what we're measuring before we know whether someone can handle more responsibility, be promoted, etc. But going back to what you were saying, sometimes it's a legitimate training problem, meaning like they just don't have the tool. We're asking them to go build something or do something, and they've never been taught the communication style, the frameworks, the process. And so sometimes it's like, yo, you are asking that person to go build something. You haven't given them the hammer, the tool. You think you did. And I'm just going to, lovingly call out a lot of leaders up here. And because especially if you're visionary and you have all the ideas, and in your head, you're like, they should just know, like they should just know. And I'm like, no, they don't know. They don't read your mind, because who trained them? Like, or have they already been trained? And who trained them in your process, your ways, your standards? Sometimes it's legitimately like, man, we need to create a tool to actually help these people. We need to create a support structure that actually can help these people. Sometimes, to Jon's point, your point, it's like it's a mindset problem. It's a coaching issue because they have all the right tools. They have all the right systems. We've had the conversations. Now it's a mindset psychology problem, right? And so talking about the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. So I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
pump that in, is like, if you're having the same conversation over and over again and you're having the same frustrations over and over again, whether it's sales calls not being done, communication not being done, whatever, um, first of all, what tools have you given your people? What training have you given them? Secondly, if they're not using the tool, what's the coaching that's required? And I think that's where a lot of leaders don't know, right? Like, how I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do coaching when we don't have time and there's too many other things, right? So, um, what do you think? I'm curious, as we think about, obviously we're a coaching and training company. We do both. We do on-site trainings. We'll come in, we'll do strategic learning days, strategic planning for executives. We'll do thriving leader events. What would you say is the benefit of doing it out of house or partnering with an outside company like ourselves versus just saying, you know what, we're just going to keep it all in house? And the reason I'm asking you that question is that I was actually on a call last week with one of my executive clients, and this is the first time they're ever open to doing something with the outside, because they always wanted it to be internal, internal, internal. And what was interesting is, because they always did it in house, it actually created a huge mess. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, and I don't know the whole process of how they did it, but they wanted to control, which I get that, right? We want to control the standard and everything. But what
Mm-hmm.
do you think are some of the benefits of hiring someone outside coaching, outside training companies to partner versus
Mm-hmm.
doing it in house? Not that I think there's a right or wrong way. I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. The ones that come to my mind right away is outside perspective that's not involved in the company, doesn't have an emotional tie to the company or anybody within the company really.
Yes.
Um, and I forgot my other point because I was lost
Why
in that
do
one.
it?
But
Why do it?
it'll
Yeah.
come up. It'll come up. But this is what I hear all the time from my clients. Because like I ended up developing a pretty good relationship with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
Because like after a lot of coaching calls and them opening up and sharing, and that was my other point is that you be vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be vulnerable to your leader or to your coworkers, right? So, but if it's an outside person, I can be a little bit more vulnerable. I can share a little bit more vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
without worrying about this coming back to me, and then people judging me based on that, right? But what I hear from my clients all the time, right, is that it's that personal piece. It's somebody from without the outside, or somebody from outside the company
Mm-hmm.
that I trust. It's not going to get back to my boss. It's not going to get
Mm-hmm.
back to my coworkers, because there's a lot of conversations that I have that there's like some internal drama or internal conflict that they don't feel like they can bring up.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that initial conversation with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I can help coach them on that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel more comfortable doing it that way, and then going out and having that conversation with their team or their boss or whatever, right? But initially they don't.
Yeah.
So it's having that, just that outside person. So it's almost like I want to say a psychological safety
Yeah,
aspect.
100%, which is huge. Safety in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
is safety in relationships is a huge thing. I think that's such a powerful point, because we really underestimate the power of when people have they do feel physically, emotionally safe. They'll show up. They'll perform better, right? This is true in a marriage. If you're constantly walking on eggshells and having to worry about offending somebody or what somebody's reaction is going to be, you're going to be, withholding information,
Yes.
ideas, solutions, afraid to fail. So that means afraid to try. And everybody says, I want my people to have more initiative. I want them to be more, go out there, and you're probably like, Christine, you need to work on this, because I'm also like, man, it needs to be like there. And that is a tension of wanting to have a high level of excellence while also giving your people freedom and autonomy to come up with ideas, to come up with solutions, to say, I don't
Mhm.
think this is going to work, or here's something crazy, let's try this. And I'm going to tag on to what you were saying is, yes, to people not being emotionally involved, which means there's no emotional charge. We create safety. There's neutrality. The other thing I'll add too is when we get people off site for trainings, and there's a facilitator. So I'm going back to training for a second, right?
Mhm.
Because the information, obviously, we have a lot of information. We teach a lot of frameworks on how to think different, how to talk different, communication frameworks, leadership frameworks, sales frameworks. There's a time to impart information. Like we need to transfer data. But what's cool is that when we facilitate an experience in a neutral environment offsite, it actually changes what people's, like, how they think and what ideas they come up with, because environments are also triggers. So a lot of companies that do these things in house, and I know y'all, we have like these beautiful boardrooms and we want to do things in house, but the reality is your offices are full of triggers. There's a way people
Mhm.
talk in that place. There's a way people think. There's a hierarchies of power, and right. So there's naturally going to be a familiar process and a familiar river of thinking and talking when people are in a familiar environment. So super powerful. This is
Yeah.
why we love
Yeah.
to get people off site, is now it's like, not only it's like level playing field, but there's a newness to it that allows new rivers of thinking
Mhm.
and new rivers of receiving. So I just wanted to
Mhm. Mhm.
share
Well,
that.
we've a lot of us have probably experienced this. It's like showing up for church, right? When you show
Yeah.
up, you walk through the doors, you're in your Sunday best, like you're putting on an image,
Yeah.
and you're expected to show up a way, like you show up that way, and then as soon as you get out those doors, then it's like the real you comes out, and that's kind of like what the off site is. You get away from that part of how you're expected to act, right? And you go to a different location, and there's a different energy, there's a different feel to it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now I feel like I can be a little bit more myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have to. It's like I'm not at work. I can actually focus on something else other than who I'm supposed to be,
Who I'm
right? And
supposed
I
to
can
be.
actually
What I'm
learn
supposed to say.
what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, and we create that experience for folks too, right? When they come to
Mm-hmm.
one of our trainings, we create
Mm-hmm.
it so it is a different feel, it is a different experience than sit down, be
Yeah.
quiet, look at the PowerPoint, like it takes them out of the elements, out of the comfort zone a little bit, right? And gets them into a nice state of learning.
Yeah. And I like the facilitation, a great facilitator or curate the experience. So that's part of like, hey, you bring the people, then we create the structure that allows for the learning to happen. And I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
back even to our last in person event that we just did, when our core team got together and we went into the mountains, and it was just, we got so much accomplished, and we had time to like go to we went to the Biltmore, we did other stuff, we played a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, we hiked a little bit, but we got so much more done. It was a power couple days, right? For us anyways, as a
Mm-hmm.
team. So I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to the next one. So
Yeah.
yeah, I want to just, as we start wrapping, I want to talk about like, how do you know that you know that you know, like some red flag warnings, like we need training. And I'm just thinking about a conversation I recently had with another client that's like, okay, this is definitely a training scenario, like we need to get training in place versus coaching. So what would you say are like, how do you know that you know that you know we need training right now
Mm.
first?
Yeah, it can be kind of difficult sometimes, but this is so I tend to work with a lot of young. If I'm working with sales, I work with a lot of young sales folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, like I'll approach the coaching aspect, and I'll try to coach them, and they're just like, I don't know what we're doing, and then I'll just keep asking questions, and pretty soon they're like, I don't know how to cold call. I don't
Yeah.
know, like what I should be asking, like how do I follow up? And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I listen, I pay attention. What are the types of questions that these folks are asking?
Mm-hmm.
because that's a pretty good indicator of like, okay,
Mhm.
we probably need to train them. We need to give them a script. We need to teach them the SOP,
Yeah.
first, and then and then like we gotta set that foundation.
Meet them where
You
they're at.
know, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I mean, we can't ask somebody to go, um, start roping calves off a horse if they don't know how to
Right.
ride the horse first, if they don't know how to get on
Right.
the horse first, right? So it's like,
Right.
okay, let's get on the horse first, and then we can get to that point. But that's what I'm always listening to what kind of questions are they asking me, and if they're asking questions of like, hey, like when I'm talking to a customer, or I'm talking to my team, and I'm always getting this kind of response or something like that. I'm like, okay, that maybe that's
Yeah.
a coaching conversation. But if they come up to me and they're like, hey, what's a good question to ask to
Mm.
get them to help me understand what their challenges are? Okay, okay, so that's a training. Now
Yeah.
that's we train on questions,
Right. That's a good
right?
point.
And then and
Yeah.
then we can move to that. Now, how do we coach them to on how to ask the question and when's the time to ask the question? You know, but a lot of them, I don't know what questions. I
I
don't know
love
what
that you
questions to ask even.
No, I love that you brought that up because it's true. And two things I want to say to that. Number one, what I'm hearing is, y'all, we need to listen. We need to listen
Mm,
to what our people are asking for. Hopefully, we have an environment where people can ask questions. And listening sometimes is listening verbally for like, what are the things that they're doing? Also, listening is observing. What are they not doing? What are they shying away from? Right? Like, what is your common frustration? Again, I'm going to go back to I had a call recently with someone and they've had a revolving door of hires, right? Like people coming in and then they'd stay for 6 weeks or 6 months and then boom, they'd go out the back door. And a high level of turnover is really detrimental to culture because over time people are like, what's going on? They don't really trust their leaders. They don't really like people are here today, gone tomorrow. We don't develop loyalty, we don't develop camaraderie. It was really a problem, the revolving door. And, I asked him, I said, show me your hiring process. Like, walk me through what happens from the minute you think about hiring someone to like, what are the questions? And then what is the process? And what is the testing? Like, what is that? And they're like, oh, we don't really have a consistent process for hiring. And I said, okay, well, show me your onboarding process. Like, how are you onboarding people into culture and standards and what excellence and success looks like in their position? And they're like, oh, well, whoever's the manager just kind of trains them. And so I was like, okay, we have a training problem, right? Like we need to create systems and processes because the pain point is, to your point, listening to the staff going, I don't know how to do this or where does this belong? And there's a lot of confusion on what, where, how. That's the process thing. So notice where your frustrations are as a leader. Do we need training? Cool. What kind of training, right? What are the skills gaps that we need? What are the knowledge gaps that we want to close or the strategies? Now, to my point is if we have that stuff in place and now we want to either people aren't getting it or they're having trouble with applying application, that's one. But really, I find coaching to be a superpower to multiply people. Like
mm,
we have great people, but they want to be rock stars. And I'm going to say this, that there's more people that are really hungry to become rock stars, champions. Like they want to be performers inside of organizations, but we don't give them a pathway. We don't show them, we don't support them in that. And I think a lot of the frustration for high level leaders, executive leaders, is that they want everybody to perform like a rock star, but you don't
mm.
invest in them like one, right? So it's like the coaching is, are you investing in growing their mindset, growing their skill set, growing their certainty, their identity, how they see
Mm,
themselves, how they talk, their communication? So this isn't just like, oh my gosh, everything's on fire, but it's also, we want to be multipliers. We want to be a company that multiplies people. I want to share one last thing,
mhm,
going back to what you were saying about I don't know how to do cold calls. There's a book
mm,
called Necessary Endings. It's over there by Henry Townsend, and he's the one who wrote Boundaries. And he talks about that there are three types of people in the world. And this is a gross generalization, okay? But I was like, I love this. He said, look, there's the wise people And the wise people are the ones that when they come to you and you give them feedback, they actually are like, thank you for the feedback. Like, I want to get better. How can I do different? Show me what you know. Like, help me understand. Those are the coachable people. Wise people, they want to get better. They can recognize, they have emotionally matured, right? They have emotionally matured. Mentally, they're more mature, probably more along the path. They've probably done some personal reflection and development. So sometimes we're dealing with a wise person that actually is hungry, and that's a great coaching conversation. Those are the people we
Mm-hmm.
coach. Then you got the fool. And the fool is kind of like in the book of Proverbs, but the fool doesn't realize that they're a fool. You give them feedback and they're like, they're offended, right? They're like, I'm trying everything and I'm doing everything. And the fool like needs more structure. And if you try to coach a fool, you're going to get nowhere because you're going to be talking to this person as a level of maturity that they don't have yet. So if someone's more like foolish, and I mean that in the sense of like they're younger, they're not as experienced, right? They're more green. You might need to just give them more training, more training, more training, more structure, so, and get them to a place where we can continue, we do both training and coaching, training and coaching. And so it's almost like they need more of a watchful eye at practice. They're coming out, they're running the drills, but we're like kind of dumbing it down and just getting them like,
Mm-hmm.
do it again, do it again, do it again. Versus the wise person who's more coachable, we can go deeper. Now, there's also a third kind of person, and this is the evil people. These are the people that just want to make everybody else's day miserable. And we all have those people. Okay. We have some of those people inside of our organizations, our families, like they're there to spread gossip, to spread poison, to create division, to disrupt peace. They're not coachable. They don't want to be coached. They don't want accountability. They don't want the tools. What they want is to complain, divide, create dissension. You got to get those people out. You got to fire fast, right? Hire slow, fire fast, get the parasites out, get the toxicity out so that you can work with the people who are trainable and coachable. What do you think about the three
Mm-hmm.
people?
I think it's spot on, and I I gotta be honest. I think I've been all three at some point. At
Yeah, me
some
too.
point, and I'm thinking about the fool, and I'm like, ooh, that's bad, But then you say the evil person, I'm like, ooh, I think I've been that person too,
Yeah.
And I think it's
Yeah.
just the sometimes it's a mindset of how I'm approaching things, in where I'm at in life, and maybe what's going on. There's a great example that I use and I give speeches on. I'm not gonna. It's way too long to say it here, so maybe this is a little teaser for maybe the next time. But a time where I was the evil person, right,
Mm,
and almost got fired. Thought I was going to get fired, but was given a second chance because I was led through it and I was coached well through it,
hmm.
right? Um,
But you are
but I
open.
think but I was open, right? So maybe I was maybe a
A little more like a
combination of
fool.
evil and fool there, right? But I could see where I was a little bit evil, right?
Mhm,
And I had to have that reality check.
mhm.
But then I was a fool, and I still find myself being a fool,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I'm like I think I know everything, and but there's sometimes I think I'm that wise person, and I try to be
Mhm.
more of that, but it
Yeah.
takes some effort and some intentionality to be that wise person,
Yeah.
you know.
And we are foolish in some areas because we don't know. We haven't developed the skill sets. We're not the experts of everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
Mark and I were driving the other day and we were talking because we have kids from ages 9 to 23. And so we were talking about how do we lead and speak to our 19-year-old man, boy becoming a man really now. You have to speak differently to that child who's 19, who's a young man, than you do to the 9-year-old. You can't talk to them all the same way because our 9-year-old, you know, he's he's not a man yet. He wants to be, but he just needs more structure, maybe a little more refereeing. And it made me think
Yes.
about how leadership is a lot like parenting. Not everybody is at the same place. And so we want to treat everybody equally. And I think that there's a way to do that from our heart where we want to have the equal heart of service. We want to invest in everyone. We really do need to look at people uniquely because they are unique. They're at different places in their development. And so, there's a lot of talk about equality, equality, equality. This is a different reframe to just say, understanding that people are at different places of maturity, of skill sets. And
Mm-hmm.
so as you look at putting together your training and development strategies, sometimes throwing a blanket on it doesn't do the trick, right? And so there's a little bit more nuance to it, more intentionality, more structure. And
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to dive into this conversation today to share these things for those of you who are doing training, coaching, maybe one, maybe the other, maybe both. Like, again, I'm going to circle back to how's it going? Are you getting the ROI on the investments that you're making in your people? If you're not making investments, like, I'm going to just ask you, what's the cost? What's the cost in
Mm-hmm.
terms of wasted time? Like, how much time do you waste? Thinking back to the hiring, the people that just go out the back door. I mean, that's a lot of wasted resources, financial resources, mental bandwidth, paying for headhunters that are not producing. And we got to ask ourselves, like, how's it going? And is it time for something fresh, something new? So I'm going to just put a plug here before we wrap it. For those of you that are thinking you'd love to revisit this, you want to explore a little bit more around what is possible within your organization, really creating a team of rock stars that are producing and performing at a high level, but really from a place of fulfillment, book a discovery call with us. We have a Thriving Leader, our 2-day Thriving Leader program is coming up in August. Seats are already filling up for that. We have our coaching programs everywhere from executive level right through the employees. So really, again, just meeting people where they're at. So if you guys want to learn more about coaching, training, development needs, I want to encourage you to book that call today. And Mark does an awesome job of just helping you really unpack where your organization is, what the needs are, what the gaps are, and how we can help get you over that finish line. Before we wrap, Jon, any final words of wisdom from our head coach around training versus coaching, and or any final words
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for our listeners?
Yeah, I think a lot of leaders, they think they don't have time to
Mm-hmm.
coach,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have time not to coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if we truly want a team that takes ownership, right, that strengthens relationships, that is a thinking team, not just a doing team,
Come
but they
on.
think for themselves and they take initiative and they're engaged and they're growing, then we have to coach these folks,
Yeah.
right? Not only ourselves, right, but hire us to do it too, right, or somebody to do it, right? But we need to be, because we can't afford not to be coaching these folks, our folks, because otherwise, we're they're either going to leave us or we're going to have them on our team and they're going to struggle,
Yeah.
right?
What happens
So we
if you
can't
don't
afford not
invest in
to.
them and they stay, right?
Yes,
So,
yes,
powerful
yep.
question. You can't afford not to invest in your people, because whether you think it is or you think it's not, it's costing you guys. And you all know, listening, I'm going to finish it where we started it. Relationships are the currency of the future. Technology and information is cheap and abounding, and it's transactional. But real relationships, having people who care about you, who invest in you, who are all on the same vision and mission, like, that's rare air, and that's where people are gravitating towards. So I think, again, that's the new economy. That's the economy of the
Mm-hmm.
future. It's the economy of peace, people, and profitability, not revenue at the expense of peace, people, and profitability. So y'all, check out the link in the comments. I hope to see some of you guys at our Thriving Leader event coming up in August. Until next time, make it a great day.